Well, good afternoon and welcome to CBJ in 30. I'm your host, Bob McElligott, and today the Blue Jackets having an optional practice in between games 3 and 4 of the Stanley Cup quarterfinal series with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Blue Jackets trailing this series now 2-1 after falling to the Penguins last night by the score of 4-3. It was a disappointing loss for sure for the Blue Jackets last night, having given up 3 goals in the span of just over 2 minutes in the third period of that game to watch the Penguins come from behind and then eventually go on to the victory last night. But for the Blue Jackets today, everybody's saying the right things, everybody doing the right things. As I mentioned, it's an optional skate. There are 8 skaters and 2 goaltenders on the ice right now for the Blue Jackets. So they're out there working on different things that they feel that they need to be working on and getting ready for tomorrow because, tomorrow is another day. The Blue Jackets only trailing this series by 1 game, so as disappointing as yesterday was, everybody knows that it's not the end of the world. It's just something that they have to go out and they have to do much better tomorrow than they did today, quite simply. So that'll be the game plan for the Blue Jackets to go out there and find a way to get the job done tomorrow. As a matter of fact, you want to know what the Blue Jackets think about it? Just had a chance to go down to the dressing room, and here's what Mark Letestu had to say about just the attitude and the way the Blue Jackets are looking at things coming into play today, or into practice today, and getting ready to play tomorrow. Hopefully I can get Mark Letestu here in just a second. I'm sure I can, and let you know. Here we go.
Ready, Keith?
Yep.
All right, here we go. Mark, here it is again, the day after. Another lesson learned last night in Game 3?
Yeah, I think it was a similar lesson to Game 1. It actually felt like another Game 1. Just being at home, maybe not knowing what to expect. I think at times the emotions got the better of us, and maybe did some things uncharacteristic. But now that's out of the way. Hopefully we'll learn from that. Now we know what to expect coming into Game 4 now. And, I'm sure we'll make the adjustments much like we did for Game 2.
We talked about this even throughout the course of the year with the Penguins. There are points where you can kind of get off your game against them, and it looked like that happened for just a couple of minutes. But, again, with a good team, a couple of minutes can make a big difference in the game, can it?
Yeah, and I think we're starting to figure out that it's very difficult to win in the playoffs. It's at another level. There has to be a stress on 60 minutes. I think it was only 2-something that they got those 3 goals in. The mistakes are so much more magnified, and that every little play means something. You don't know which play it's going to be, so the focus has to really be there. But at times I thought we played into their hands with some of the puck decisions we made. That we were a lot smarter with in Game 2 that helped us with some more success.
I think that's something that sometimes gets lost on the outside, especially when you have a 2-goal lead in a game, that this still is a young team that is learning these situations and learning how to play in these big games like this.
Yeah, and I think the objective here is to learn on the fly as best as you can. We've talked about this morning, about some of the things that led to some of the miscues, and hopefully we're going to iron that out. We know the building's going to be great for Game 4. We'll try and ride that wave of emotion, get off to another good start, and try and eliminate some of the things that took away from that momentum, and try and ride that wave of energy the crowd gave us.
You ever wonder why you guys can't do anything the easy way? It seems like you have to fight and battle and claw for everything you get.
Yeah, I think everything good's hard, though. I think nobody's won a Stanley Cup the easy way. I think the fact that we face it head on a lot of the time here as a group makes it easier for us. We don't shy away from the hard stuff, from the adversity. It's very our way. We like doing things the hard way. If there's an obstacle, we seem to want to go through it instead of around it. So but that's all right with us. Our way is our way, and we enjoy doing it that way.
Excellent. So that is Mark Letestu talking this morning. And again, not that Mark Letestu ever says the wrong things. He always says the right things. But I think the perspective is very good right there, and especially when I asked him about doing things the hard way, he said, that's the way we do it, and that's the way they're used to. So, again, the Blue Jackets know it's not the end of the world. Well, the idea of this show is a chance for you to interact within a 30-minute span, so let's do that. If you have any questions, you can tweet those to me and use the hashtag CBJin30. That's CBJIN, the numbers 3 and 0. And just as simply as doing that, I can see your questions and get to your questions. And the first question I'll use today comes from Zachary Joy. It says, what was the mood in the room after the game? Umberger looked visibly upset with himself over his turnover leading to the 4th goal. It's funny that somebody named Zachary Joy is asking me about the mood in the locker room. It was anything but that, Zachary. It was the opposite of you. It was misery is a little bit too harsh to put it, but they weren't happy with themselves. They weren't happy at all, and RJ was upset. And his turnover, that puck that went right to Evgeny Malkin that wound up getting pushed out to the point, and Oli Mata's shot that was tipped by Jussi Jokinen and then hit James Wisniewski and went in the net. That was a killer. That one hurt. And he was upset about that. He knew that he made a mistake, and he admitted that to me after the game when he said that, I made one of those mistakes. So they were upset. They felt they had the game in hand, and they let it get away without question. And that was pretty much that was a rule in the dressing room. Everybody I talked to felt exactly the same way. If there was one thing that, and Umberger said this, and everybody else kind of said it without coming right out and saying it, but RJ did say that he felt that with Cam Atkinson's goal that made it 3-1, that he thought that was going to be enough to win the game. And I think the Blue Jackets as a team felt like that was going to be enough to win the game, and they backed off. And they started to play that prevent-style defense. James Wisniewski just said downstairs a couple of minutes ago, prevent defense prevents you from winning. And the Penguins sensed that, they felt it, and they turned it on because they know how to smell the blood in the water and then take advantage of it because they're an experienced playoff team. Let's see, David says, will we have to endure the awful and one-sided officiating the entire series? Yes. Yes, you will. It's as simple as that. And not to get into calls that were made that shouldn't have been made or calls that should have been made that weren't made or anything like that, but, it's obvious they're watching things extremely closely, and there's going to be power plays, and I know there were more for the Penguins than there were for the Blue Jackets, but for the Blue Jackets, what they're going to have to do is you're going to have to try to stay out of the penalty box as much as you possibly can, and then you've got to kill off penalties, and they've done a good job killing the last two games. But they don't want to be in the box 6, 7, 8 times a game. I get that. And there's some, the Nick Foligno call where he came in and he sprayed Marc-Andre Fleury with snow, and they gave him an unsportsmanlike penalty. Wow, is all I can say to that one. That was one of the ones, and he did it well after the play. I understand the whole premise of it. But in a regular season game, that very seldom, if ever, gets called. And then here we are in a playoff game, and somebody wants to jump all over it and call it. So if that's the way it's going to be, what you have to do as a team is, quite frankly, you have to realize where they're going with the calls. You have to try to figure out, where are we at here? What's going on? And that is the one thing, and again, nobody will talk about this because, they don't want to put themselves – Todd Richards said it best last night. He said, if I talk about the officiating, I just put myself in a bad spot and I put our team in a bad spot. And he's right. That's exactly right. So you don't want to talk about it. But on the other hand, I heard Aaron Portzline ask the question yesterday morning and last evening, do you know where the line is as a team? Do you know what is a penalty and what isn't a penalty? And that is a great question because I'm not sure that anybody really does know what is legal and what isn't legal right now. So that's an interesting one. But you know what? The officiating is always bad when it's going against you. So, you got to deal with it. Part of the playoffs. Like it or don't like it. Mitch wants to know, is our defense that bad or is the Penguins' offense that good? 3 goals in under 10 minutes is impressively disappointing. I like that phrasing, Mitch. Impressively disappointing. The answer is yes and yes. Well, the defense isn't that bad. It's the way that they started to play. It's the way that they backed up. They got on their heels. I've said this all morning long. And I said it last night after the game. There's some people I talked to last night, and they were all beside themselves that lead got away. Here's all I have to say to you. Have you not been watching this team play all season? Have you not seen it? And was that a surprise to you last night? Because one thing that has been a trait is, especially against good teams, they play well, and then they get to a point where it's almost like, oh, my goodness, I think we're going to win this thing. And then it changes. And then you make a mistake. And then they get on their heels. How many times this year have we seen 2 quick goals in a game? Now, I will admit it. The third one surprised me. The go-ahead goal surprised me. It came that fast. The 2 that tied the game, I wasn't all that surprised because I've seen it so many times this year, and the Penguins are a quick strike offense. And you make mistakes, you give them chances, and they do exactly what they did last night. So is the Penguins' offense that good? Yes. Is the Blue Jackets' defense that bad? No. But when you alter your game and you start to play differently, that puts you in a bad spot. And I think also at that point last night, another thing is I think that I think you get to a point where you rely on Sergei Bobrovsky too much. I think all of a sudden everybody goes, well, Bob will be there, so let's, now let's get back in front of him and we'll do, we'll help. And all it caused was a bunch of deflections and some goals last night. So, one of those things. One of those things. Next one is from Playoff Beardy Face. He says, we've seen the Blue Jackets come up short twice. Who do you think could have and should have contributed more? I don't think it's an individual. Again, I think it's playing what got you to that point. What got you the 2-goal lead early? What got you the 2-0 lead until the final 2 seconds of the second period? What put you up 3-1 early in the third period? Well, it was aggressiveness. It was attacking the Penguins. It was coming after them. It was not backing up. It was not waiting for them to come through the neutral zone and see how they were going to set it up. It was hitting them while they were in the neutral zone, forcing a turnover, taking the puck back the other way. That's what they got away from in the game last night. So it's not – I'm not going to say this guy should have done this or this guy should have done that because I don't believe that you can pin it on individuals. I just think that, you need to – don't alter the way that you were playing. Continue to press and continue to take chances. You're in your home building. Continue to take chances and play aggressively. And, to me, if you are aggressive and you make mistakes and you lose, I'm okay with that. I don't know how Todd Richards is, but I'm okay. If you're going to be aggressive and you make a mistake, okay. But if you're going to back up and be passive and make mistakes and lose, that doesn't sit as well with me as, the guy or the guys that are trying to push the envelope and get things done. The other thing is you look at the Penguins' goals and they score them on shots from the blue line that redirected or were tipped in or whatever the case. And I would really like to see the Blue Jackets take more shots from the blue line. I think there's I'm not on the ice, so it's easy for me to say from sitting upstairs, but some of those shots, I would like to see them get more shots through and get those same opportunities to redirect down low and things like that. Don't be afraid to shoot the puck. I think at points this team gets into situations where they get into a passing mindset. And instead of just throwing it in there and going for the ugly goal, let's face it, the first 2 goals that they got, Boone Jenner's goal was an ugly goal. And what I mean by ugly is Jack Skilling takes a shot into the pads, and Boone picks it up and he fires it back in off the rebound. Boom. That's an ugly goal. There's no finesse about that thing. That's just one guy hammers it, the other guy follows up and hammers it again. So do that. Put it in the back of the net. And Jack Johnson's goal just comes down and slams it in. It doesn't have to be – you don't have to make 3 passes and get the goalie out of position, have him sprawled out on the ice and tuck it around his skate for it to count. That looks nice. That's great. But give me 5 ugly goals and win 5-3 instead of 3 pretty goals and lose 4-3. That's my opinion. Nick wants to know, is there a line you think needs to perform better in Game 4 for the Blue Jackets to win? Is there a line that needs to perform better? No, not really. I think the line that will perform better, to be honest with you, is the Anisimov, Umberger, and Foligno line. And I think they'll perform better because Umberger and Foligno are just getting back in the lineup. I thought Nick was good last night. I don't think he was nearly up to speed as what he was during the regular season. And I didn't expect him to be because he's coming off an injury. So he was good. He wasn't great. I expect he's going to be going back toward great in the next game. Umberger the same way. He made the mistake last night. He turned the puck over in the third period. Okay, so be it. Wipe it off and go back to work. And Anisimov, to me, he's not getting any mentions. He's not getting any headlines. Nobody's talking about him. But that's a good thing for him. It would be better if he was scoring goals. I get that. But what he is doing is he's playing a two-way game. And he is a great defensive centerman. He's filling the role of a third-line centerman right now for this team. I think he's doing a fantastic job. I think he'll continue to do a good job. Maybe he'll find the back of the net too. Who knows? But he kind of goes by the wayside. I was doing an interview this morning, and somebody asked me about the Nash trade and getting Brandon Dubinsky, and boy, how good does that look right now? And I said, listen, don't forget about Artem Anisimov, because he's a big part of why this team is sitting where it's sitting right now, for all the work he did during the regular season and the work that has gone kind of unnoticed so far here in the playoffs. So I think that line will get better. I'm not saying that, they have to get better for this team to win, blah, blah, blah. I just think they will get better tomorrow. Let's see. Next one says here, 5 days wants to know, what do you think that the Blue Jackets need to work on the most going into Game 4? Mindset. Really, mindset. They've shown they know how to execute in this series. It's just the mindset of continuing to play the same game for 60 or 80 or 81 minutes and 10 seconds, whatever it takes in this series. So, just mindset. And I think they're in the right mindset today. Nobody wanted to talk about, oh, woe is us, what happened last night. And, they kind of brushed it off. They learned in game one. They had a 2-goal lead in game one. They blew it. Penguins had a 2-goal lead in game two. They blew it. Blue Jackets won. And then it happened again last night. I can't believe nobody's asked the question, do you think there will ever be a score other than 4-3 in this series? Which is good because I don't know the answer. Right now it doesn't look like it. Hey, Kurt Ludlow's listening today, and he says, do you think the refs have been fair to the Blue Jackets in this series? Of course not, Kurt. Why would you ever think that? And I'm sure that there are Penguins fans that don't think that they've been fair to them in some instances, although, that's just the nature of the fan and the nature of the beast. Let me just say this. It's all I'm going to say about the officiating. And if you don't believe me, tweet Mark Wyatt and ask him if this is true. I come in here on a nightly basis, I look at the sheet, and I look at the referees, and I will say, this will be a well-called game tonight, or this is the potential to be a travesty tonight, okay? That's all I'm going to tell you. I look at the names, I make a judgment, and oh, by the way, I'll bet you I'm 97% right on any given night. Caitlin wants to know, do the Blue Jackets have what it takes mentally to beat the Penguins in the playoffs? Yes, they do. They do have what it takes. Now, does that mean that they're going to do it? I don't know. It doesn't. Having the mentality and then having the execution and getting it done are obviously two different things. But here's what I think. And I know that the Pittsburgh media talked about this prior to the series starting. The first playoff series that the Penguins were in with Sidney Crosby, they played the Ottawa Senators. I can't even remember if they won a game in that series or not. But they were a young team, much like the Blue Jackets, a young Malkin, young Crosby, and they got in against the Senators, and they lost that first round of the playoffs. But they took so much out of that experience, and they came back the next year, and I believe the next year is when they went to the Stanley Cup Final and lost to Detroit. And then they came back the next year and wound up against Detroit in the final again and beat them and won the Stanley Cup. So this is a thing that sounds like an excuse to you probably right now, but here's what you have to remember. There is still a learning curve for this team. And these experiences that they're getting right now, even though they're not getting the result that you want and that they want, these are all things that they're going to be able to draw upon in the future. And if you don't believe it, just look at last year to this year. Last year they missed out on making the playoffs by a tiebreaker. They had the points, well, -1, but they didn't have the tiebreaker. So what did they learn from that? They learned this year it was going to take more, and they went out and they got more, and they got into the playoffs. And now they're learning things against one of the elite teams in the National Hockey League that they'll be able to take out of it. If they beat the Penguins in this series, trust me, they will have just a satchel full of lessons that they can take into the next series against the Rangers or the Flyers. And if they don't make it out of this series, they're going to take that same bag of lessons, they're going to put it right next to their beds, and they're going to think about it and reach in there throughout the summer and think, what could we have done better? What do we have to do next year? And that's the way they're going to go into training camp. So just the patience, it's hard to have patience, especially when you're in the playoffs. But I'm telling you, there's no team that just all of a sudden knew how to win the Stanley Cup without going through the process a step at a time. Or as John Davidson likes to say, brick by brick. And this is really just part of that foundation building for this team. Let us see here. I'll go through and find somebody else that has a question here. Again, use the hashtag CBJN30, CBJIN30. Sarah wants to know, to go with your 4-3 final score question, can either team be up by 3-1 and still win? Yes, although I have no proof to back that up. But yes, they can. It just hasn't happened. It's funny. I said to what I asked RJ last night. I said it used to be that one of the cliches in the game was a 2-goal lead is the most dangerous lead in hockey, and then it seemed like coming out of not this lockout but the previous lockout that it was the 3-goal lead was the most dangerous lead in hockey. But now the 2-goal lead. Number one? Okay, who wants to score first the rest of the way in this series? Nobody, because the team that scores first loses. Secondly, who wants to have a 3-1 lead? Nobody, because the team that has a 3-1 lead loses. So it's Really weird. Really, really, really weird, to be honest with you. Wes wants to know, do you think that our style or brand of hockey is forcing too many penalties against the Blue Jackets, and should they ease up a bit? Wes, they can ease up a bit if they want to. And if they ease up a bit, they should dust off the golf clubs and get ready to hit the course. No, they should not ease up. The penalties are what the penalties are. Okay, if they were to ease up, now they changed their brand, they changed their style. You got to the playoffs playing a certain way. You've won a game in the playoffs playing a certain way. You don't change that. And that's what I was talking about. In the third period, they kind of changed that. They kind of backed off a little bit, playing more, conscious of not taking a penalty and all that stuff. And what did it do? Well, it contributed to the Penguins coming to life and, getting back in the game. As simple as that. Let's see. What is Krieger wants to know? I really don't like hearing the argument, well, that's just hockey. Any way to avoid giving up late period goals, practice, scout? Krieger, come on. Are you serious? Scouting? These guys are video scouting. Todd Richards has watched almost every game the Penguins have played since January. So there's been scouting. Plus, by the way, now you're into Game 4 of a playoff series. You saw these guys 5 times in the regular season. 3 times. You're going into Game 9 against this team. They know what they're going to do. Practice? Of course you practice. But it is, to say, well, that's just hockey, that's a cliche. But it's all a mindset. It's all a mindset. It's all of playing to win and not playing not to lose. That's really what it is. And I know you don't want to hear that because everybody wants to say, well, if you went out and you did just this, you'd fix that problem. No, you won't fix that problem because a lot of that problem in losing those late leads against good teams is between the ears. And it's lack of experience. And you've got to learn from it. Go back to when right after the trade deadline, day after trade deadline. Blue Jackets went into Chicago and got blown up 6-1. Hammered, pounded, whacked, done. 2 days later, went into Nashville, shut out the Predators 1-0. What is my point? My point is the experience of 2 days previous and that feeling of getting beaten like that, they took into the next game and changed it around. Fixed it. Game 1 of this series, 3-1 lead, let it get away, lost the game. Game 2 of the series, come back, fall down 3-1, climb back, gut it out, get the victory. It's experiences. It really is experiences. You can what are you going to practice till you're blue in the face? Hey, let's pretend there's 3 minutes left and we're up by 2. And how do you create that? You can't because it's not the same pressure that's going to happen when it happens for real. It's experience. It's finding a way. The Penguins know how to do it because they've been to the playoffs. They've won a Stanley Cup. They know how to deal with it. The Blue Jackets are now going to know how to deal with it coming out of this series and going into the next one. They'll know how to deal with it. Trust me. Oh, let me see here as we go through. What do you got there? We did that one, I do believe. Todd wants to know, this is a good question, what has been the most significant change in the national perception of the Blue Jackets or in the city of Columbus in the last week? Well, here's what I think. When you get into the national spotlight, international spotlight in this case, people get to see a lot of things about your team. They get to learn about your players. When the games come to your city, they get a chance to get glimpses of what goes on. And I will tell you that I just sounded like Jeff Rimmer right there, didn't I? I cannot tell you how much that scares me that I just did that. That scares me to no end. But here's a fact. Last night, anybody that was watching and saw the atmosphere in this building last night has been extremely impressed. And I think they've forgotten about that. If you go back 5 years to when the Blue Jackets played the Red Wings in the playoffs, they knew about it and it was talked about, and then you fall off the map for 5 years. And people forget. And then they start talking about a non-traditional market and, can they survive and blah, blah, blah. Last night is just a great example to everybody in the hockey world that this is a viable place to play. This is a great fan base, and this is a building that when you have a consistent winner that is going into the playoffs and needing that home crowd to be behind them, they're going to be there. It was so great last night, and you do have to wonder, after you go through the regular season and you see the crowds that are here during Pittsburgh games, you have to wonder, what's it going to be like? What's it going to be like? Are there going to be a lot of Penguins fans in here? And I thought what was the greatest to me was pregame warm-up. The Blue Jackets hit the ice to a huge roar. The Penguins hit the ice to a huge chorus of boos. And the tone was set right there. Yeah, there were Penguin sweaters in the crowd. You could see them here and there. But it was nothing like that last regular season game against the Penguins at the end of March. There were no fans that were just crowded around the glass on the Penguins' end during warm-ups. There were some, but not nearly what it was at the end of March. That was great. And to me, that's a turning point in this franchise and where it is and how it's perceived. And I said this from the start. We talked about this all summer when we talked about moving to the Eastern Conference, who will be the rival. The Rangers right now, a little bit of a better rival because of the Rick Nash incident and the guys that have been traded back and forth. Pittsburgh is geographical, but this playoff series is going to start to really cement a rivalry between these two teams. And the only way you get a rivalry is you have to beat somebody. And the Blue Jackets have beaten them once and very well could be sitting with a 3-0 lead in this series. They could be. They're not, but they could be. And believe me, the Penguins know it. They know that they could be in really big trouble here. Steve Neary wants to know, how will finishing checks help us if we are exhausted in the third? All right, so what do you want to do, Steve? You just want to sit back and let them fly all over the place? Why don't you just let them skate all over the place for 2 periods, shoot from wherever they want to, get down near the front of the net, park 2 guys in front of Sergei Bobrovsky so that you still have energy in the third period? Really? They stopped hitting. That was a problem. They stopped hitting last night. They stopped hitting in game 1. I think there were 30 hits in the first period last night, and then maybe not 30 hits the next 2 periods combined. When they were doing that, they were winning. Are you going to get tired? Of course you're going to get tired. But you think Chris Letang's not going to get tired from being pounded every time that he's on the ice by Matt Calvert or Brandon Dubinsky? Do you think that Brooks Orpik, is the veteran defenseman who's been in this league for a long time, likes the fact that he knows Blake Como's going to hammer him every time he has the puck along the boards? Do you think Matt Niskanen is going to like the fact that Derek McKenzie is bearing down on him and is about to drop a shoulder right into his shoulder and hammer him into the corner? Do you think they like that? What do you want to do? You just want to let him sit back and, hey, throw out the welcome mat. Welcome to our building. Let's be great hosts. They weren't tired in the third period. They stopped that game. They changed the mindset. I'm going to answer this question. John wants to know, do you think the Jackets will use the same ticket restrictions next season to keep the Penguins fans out? Nope, because I don't think there will be as many Penguins fans coming as there will be Blue Jackets fans coming. How's that? And everybody knows, and it's not, listen, restrictions this, restrictions that. There are a lot of people that live in this area that were Penguins fans before and come here. We all know that. But you know something? They are going to be more apt to grab that Blue Jackets jersey than to grab a Penguins jersey. And that's what I was telling you a little bit earlier with the rivalry and with this series. It's going to change the mindset of a lot of people. I really think it is. You've got to prove that you can be a winner. You've got to prove that you can skate with the elite in the league. And as soon as you do that, then you're going to win people over. Felino's Flock wants to know, the Blue Jackets are out hitting the Penguins by a large margin. How do you think that will wear on the Pens in Game 5 and on? Game 5, I think it's going to wear on them by Game 4. I just talked with Jody Shelley about this. If you watch our CBJ Today report later on our mobile app or the website, you'll see it. He talked about Jaromir Jagr when he played with the Flyers, and Jagr was looking ahead in the series and saying, if we do these things in games 1, 2, and 3, the defensemen playing against us are going to be tired by the time we get to game 4, 5, and 6. And it was that foresight, and I know Jody has told me this story before, and he was talking about cycling the puck. Whoever Jagr was playing with, he wanted them to cycle. He said, we're going to cycle and cycle and cycle, and we're going to run those defensemen around and around and around and around. And it might not do anything today, and it might not do anything 2 days from now or 4 days from now. But I'll tell you what, by the time we get to Game 4, those guys are going to have tired legs. And then we're going to jump on them. We're going to take advantage of them. And it's the same thing here. All of those hits start to accumulate, and they start to add up. And hopefully we're going to start seeing the effects of that in Game 4. All right, Kevin Zuckerman wants to know, who's been the most surprising player, pleasant or otherwise, for the Blue Jackets in this series? That's a tough question because, no, it's not a tough question. I'm going to answer the question here, and I'm going to tell you why. Jack Skilly has been a pleasant surprise to me. And the reason is This guy was only here for a couple of stints, and I know he got a couple of big goals. But to be honest, he spent most of the season in the American Hockey League. And he comes up, and not only is he in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but he's playing on the top line with Ryan Johansson and Boone Jenner. And last night, it was his shot into Marc-Andre Fleury's pads that set up Boone Jenner for the first goal of the game. And he has not looked out of place here whatsoever. He's a former number 1 draft pick of the Chicago Blackhawks. He's a number 1 pick that hasn't panned out the way that not only Chicago, but he himself had hoped. He's been with Chicago and then in Florida, and now he's come here signing a 2-way contract. So he's been a nice surprise for me. He's got that energy. He's got speed. He did a couple of nice jobs taking pucks away on the wall last night. And it's easier for me to go with him than a guy like Boone Jenner or Matt Calvert because they don't surprise me so much. Whenever people from out of the market were asking me going into the series, well, who's somebody, especially in Pittsburgh, who's somebody that the Penguins fans might not know about, but they will know about? Boone Jenner was the first guy out of my mouth because of the way he's played this year. He's tenacious and tough, and you can't get the puck off of him, and he's always in the right position. And Matt Calvert, what he did in Game 2 with the 2 goals, a shorthanded goal, the double overtime game winner, we've seen that from those guys. So they don't surprise me as much. To me, it's almost expected, not surprising, when they do those kind of things. But Jack Skilly, having to wait and finally getting a chance to play in the Stanley Cup playoffs with the Blue Jackets this year, that's a surprise. It's a pleasant surprise to me. And so that's my answer to you. All right, 3 more questions, and then we will wrap this one up tonight. Here's one. It's really? I'm not reading that handle. I'll read the question. What can the Blue Jackets do to help Bobrovsky with the shots from the point? Clear out that guy from alongside the net. The guy that's tipping the puck behind him. That's what they've got to do. Get that guy out of there. Wisniewski was trying to do that, and the puck hit him in the pants, and it went in. So that was an unfortunate break. But when Brandon Sutter's posted up there, find a way, get a body on him, get him out of there, move him, distract him, disrupt him, block down that shot before it gets there. To me, that's a big thing. There's 2 things you want to do. Number 1, you want to give your goaltender a chance to see the shot coming from the point. And number 2, you want to make sure that there's nobody standing down there because of A, a deflection, and B, a rebound. So make sure those guys are away from the side of the net. Jody says, I was watching the game last night, and I was thrilled to hear the roar of the crowd. It really helps the team, and it does. And the guys were talking about that this morning. They talked about it a little bit last night, but they were so disappointed with the way that the game went. They didn't really get into it. But they did talk about it this morning, about the atmosphere and how wonderful it was and how much they're looking forward to playing again tomorrow night. Actually, Ryan Johansson had a great quote after last night's game where he said, I would honestly put my wet gear on right now and go back out there and play Game 4 in front of that crowd. So that's a huge compliment from a young man that really appreciates and understands what the home crowd advantage is. All right, one more question here on today's edition of CBJ in 30, and this comes from Flowers. How do you guys make up these names, by the way, for yourselves? Like, seriously, is it like a name like that? When somebody do that at 1:45 in the morning? I don't think I'll make a Twitter account. What are you going to call it? Anyway, it says, on a lighter note, how do you come up with some of your goal calls? They're awesome stuff. I can't divulge secrets. All right, I will divulge secrets. I've gotten this a lot in the last couple of weeks. I just got to hear it, whether it's something somebody says, whether it's something I hear in a song, maybe in a movie, TV show, it doesn't matter. But it always has to jump out to me to say, that makes absolutely no sense and would sound great after the Blue Jackets score a goal. So, maybe if you can come up with a Twitter handle like that, you can say something that means absolutely no sense, and it might be good for me. I don't know. But I don't solicit writers. I don't. It's got to work for me. It's got to work in my own mind. My kids try to give them to me sometimes. I don't even think I've tried one yet. I don't think I've tried. My son's here. Have I tried one yet? No, I haven't tried one yet. See, it's tough. It's tough to get on the list. Really tough to get on the list. $5? No, that won't get you on the list either. Oh, well, that'll wrap up today's edition of CBJ in 30. The Blue Jackets have left the ice. The Penguins are scheduled to practice here this afternoon. I would imagine that would be an optional practice for the Penguins, who are going to be looking to take a 3-1 series lead tomorrow night in Game 4 of this best-of-7 playoff series. Well, this has gone well. It's been fun. Thanks for your questions today, and we'll do it again. Hopefully we're going to be doing this again. Try to make this a regular feature. As a matter of fact, tomorrow night, Blue Jackets and Penguins, Game 4 of their best-of-7 series, 7 o'clock here at Nationwide Arena. Gates open at 5:30. Tomorrow we've got the morning skate. We're going to stream it live. Jody Shelley and I, thanks again for your questions today, and we will see you tomorrow for Game 4 of the Stanley Cup playoffs.